Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Thanks for joining us on Money FM 89.3. Audrey Seek with you here on Morning Shot. And we're starting to unpack this year's National Day rally speech, which Lawrence Wong delivered on Sunday night. This was his second rally as Prime Minister, and once again, it set out the broad direction for Singapore's future. From frontier technologies like AI to redevelopment plans in Singapore's north, jobs and family management, PM Wong called on Singaporeans to adopt a we first mindset and touched on challenges that go beyond today's headlines and will shape the coming decade.
We say this in our national pledge. It starts with a simple but profound statement. We, the citizens of Singapore. It's not I or me, it is we. To keep Singapore going, we must be a we first society. Because if everyone only thinks about me, and puts me ahead of we, then we are finished.
Well, we are joined by two guests in the studio this morning to help us unpack the top takeaways and what they mean for businesses, families, and society at large. And we're happy to welcome Dr. Reuben Ng, Assistant Professor at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. Good morning, Reuben. Great to see you again.
Thanks for having me back.
Thank you. And joining in as well is Goh Yen Han, political correspondent at the Straits Times. And Yen Han, it's been a long night for you, so we really appreciate your time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, let's start off with a broad look, guys. We know that PM Wong touched on many issues, but if you had to narrow it down, what would you highlight as the top, let's say, 3 takeaways from this year's rally? Reuben will help you kick us off.
Yeah, 3 things came to mind. One was that the speech felt very hyper-local. So things like talking about building health posts, talking about CDC-led jobs, so jobs near you, essentially. And I thought that in his Chinese speech, he actually went very local. He cited a Hokkien song of a small umbrella.
Oh.
So that felt very local as well. So number 1 is really hyper-local. Number 2, it just felt like it was quite future-focused, going ahead together. So it's a we-focused, it's a citizens as partners. So I thought that was a really interesting second theme. And third, actually, I felt that he sort of reached into the spiritual realm, talking about, Singapore spirit. He used the word faith. He says, let's have faith, let's go about together. Singapore is more than the sum of its parts and things like that.
Okay.
So very hyper-local, future-focused, and quite spiritual.
All right, Yen Han, same sentiments from you?
I think first off, what I felt was that he went more of the broad directions. I think if we look at it being his second ever rally, we also have to take into account that it's actually his first rally in this term of government. So he's kind of taking the time to, draw out the broad strokes, what his government plans to do, the principles that they will follow in dividing the policies that they're going to take in the future. And I think something that came across as well to me was the focus on jobs. So it cut across 2 segments of his speech, covering the economy as well as the young. And when he gave out the more detailed announcements, those were actually the ones that centered on jobs, including the local job matching one that Reuben just mentioned.
Okay, so let's zoom in on the economy and competitiveness now. Then PM Wong called innovation and technology a quote, overarching priority for Singapore. So Reuben, how should we understand this in the context of jobs and long-term competitiveness going forward?
I think innovation is going to be the key. I think there'll be many cycles of disruption. So I think what PM Wong was really focused on was that, yes, the government could come up with a lot of initiatives, but it's really incumbent on the individual person, the employee, to sort of accelerate forward in terms of SkillsFuture, reskilling, upskilling. So I think that, as Yen Han mentioned, the focus was really jobs and taking individual agency to survive in this world of greater disruption.
Yeah. All right. So Yen Han, the new job matching initiative will be rolled out at the town level and is led by the Community Development Council. So not just the vouchers the CDC is going to be doing. How significant is this kind of localized approach compared to existing national level schemes that we already have?
I think one of the areas you can benefit from this local, hyper-local model is the fact that there are actually a lot of existing ties with between the CDCs and the kind of local partners within the town. So we already see this in some of the estates. I've seen this in Punggol, I've seen this elsewhere. And I think this is how they are trying to also match people who want to work close to their homes.
Okay. So PM Wong also spoke about ensuring Singaporeans do not fall behind, is the quote that he used, in a fast-changing economy. And in that same light, PM Wong also acknowledged worries about AI replacing jobs. And he basically highlighted that we can work with AI instead of be replaced, right? So what does this all reveal about the confidence or maybe the preparedness when it comes to the government working with the local workforce in this issue, Reuben?
I think AI is not new. I think it's been around for a while. It just came into public consciousness when ChatGPT came to the fore about 2 years ago. So I think I think we want to acknowledge that this is not an entirely new phenomenon. Singapore has been preparing for it for a while. Even before ChatGPT came to public consciousness, we had AISG, we had many different national schemes. It's just that things have really accelerated. So what it means that as much as there are risks, there are also opportunities.
Right.
I felt that it was quite future-focused last night because he was also focused on the opportunities that SMEs can take in a tight labour market. You can use technology to do a lot more things. He cited examples of Q&M Dental using AI to pre-diagnose before the dentist actually goes and look at the scans and things like that. So I think it brings a lot of productivity to SMEs and also to individuals. The question is, how can you take the next step? Right? Because sometimes it's such as a high goal, right? So I think what the government is trying to do is to come up with schemes so that you can make AI as relevant as possible for yourself and take the next step right away.
So Yen Han, we talked about SMEs here. AI adoption isn't just for the big players anymore. SMEs were spotlighted as using AI in practical ways. What could wider SME adoption mean for, productivity, jobs, overall business competitiveness here in Singapore?
So I think when we look at the SMEs, we're looking at the next level of AI adoption. So at the start, he mentioned about, frontier technology, and that's not something we necessarily have to chase. When we talk about AI being the next big thing in technology, we want to talk about broad-based adoption, and I think that's where the SMEs come in. So, when we want to allow the SMEs to adopt this kind of technology, we have to ensure that they apply it meaningfully, which I think is a word that PM Wong has used on several occasions, and not wanting to just rush in headlong to this kind of thing.
Yeah. All right. So as a parent, I'd also like to squeeze in a couple of questions on family management. We know we're dealing with an aging society as well as something falling birth rate is also an issue now. PM Wong even highlighted the importance of limiting screen time for kids. How do you read the significance of spotlighting such, social issues at the rally, Reuben?
I think he was highlighting the risk of technology and AI. Now, this hits home for me because I have 4 young kids.
Yes, 4.
So the way I limit screen time is for them to play with each other.
Okay.
Right? So maybe outdoors, right? So I think maybe one solution is just to have more kids so that they can play with each other. But, on a more serious note, I think risk need to be managed as much as we leverage on the opportunities. But I think the greater concern that I have is he talked about, the government will partner you at different stages of life. But I think the interesting thing today and more complex thing today is that these stages of life are now overlapping. In the past, maybe my parents' grandparents' generation used to have kids in their 20s. Right? And the kids grow up, and maybe when they are 50s, they start taking care of older adults. But now we're having kids later, right? Maybe 30s or 40s. And that stage of taking care of kids is now overlapping with the stage that we are taking care of our aging parents.
That's right, the sandwich generation.
Correct. So it leads to this, what psychologists call an established adulthood from 35 to 49, where you face career care crunch. So I think we need to understand that there are now interlocking moments of life, overlapping stages of life. How can policies come together to help the whole person rather than stages discretely?
I think that's a great point. And Yen Han, I want to bring you in now. We talked a lot about these kind of social issues. Is there anything that stood out for you in terms of family management, maybe the age well neighborhoods that he brought up as well?
Yeah, personally, my parents are aging as well. So there's a concern about how they're going to manage on their own as they get older when the different illnesses and diseases creep in. I think what we're trying to do with the HL neighborhoods here, it seems that the government wants to take advantage of the infrastructure that's already existing in a lot of these towns, rather than, building a lot of community care apartments everywhere, which obviously have their own kind of costs. You want to leverage the infrastructure that already exists and then help the elderly who are already living where they are and are probably unlikely to want to move to be able to age more comfortably in their homes.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of infrastructure, we should turn to the redevelopment plans now. Those plans were announced for areas like Woodlands, Kranji, Sembawang. Why the focus on the north this time? And how significant might these plans be in terms of, drawing jobs, talent, and investment to the north? Reuben?
I think Yen Han was very astute in talking about PM Wong looking at setting his agenda for the new term of government, right? So I think he's now going long-term compared to last year in a way. He talked about the URA master plan, the 10-15-year plan.
Yep.
And the URA master plan has been in the works for a while, and that focused on sort of what's going to happen in the next 10-15 years in the future. And I think that the North has come up as a place that we can focus on. Now, I think what is interesting about the Woodlands development and these northern developments is that you start to bring more economic opportunities to where you are living, right? Like stuff like the jobs near you and things like that. So I think that's something we can look forward. So jobs near you cannot be where there's a concentration of SMEs, right? There's a lesser concentration of SMEs in the north. So bringing it there actually is almost an implementation of the CDC-led Jobs Near You initiative.
All right, so we can't talk about jobs without talking about SkillsFuture, which is, of course, a big initiative here in Singapore. And with SkillsFuture courses now expanding beyond institutes of higher learning to include more industry leaders and private providers, what should workers keep in mind, when choosing which courses are most valuable for their careers? Reuben, you want to chime in here?
Sure. I think we need to think about supply and demand. Sometimes it's extremely overwhelming. Let's say if I want to move on in my career, I may want to go to an adjacent job. How do I know what skills to pick up, right? It's not possible, even though I have $4,000. I just revealed my age, right? Even though I have $4,000, sometimes it's very difficult to choose what exactly to do, right?
Yeah.
I'm just overwhelmed, almost decision paralysis because there's just so many options. So perhaps something to think about is supply and demand. So which means that what are skills that are in short supply and high demand? So one of the key things I usually look at in my analysis is what jobs have not been filled for 6 months or more. If jobs have been not filled for 6 months or more, and those skills are what they're looking for, I probably want to dive into that.
All right, Yen Han, any thoughts on the SkillsFuture initiatives?
I think that taps on what PM Wong has already been saying for the past few years, which is also looking at the mid-career workers who we are seeing that face a bit more difficulty in finding the next job.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to turn now to the Woodlands checkpoint. It will be 5 times bigger, and flexible industrial spaces are planned around the RTS link to Johor. So what opportunities could this open up for businesses and workers, especially with the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone coming up as well? Reuben?
I think there'll be a lot of development in the area. I think, as you mentioned correctly, 5 times bigger. He was also talking about now a third link to JB, Johor Bahru. So I think it's just going to bring a lot more activity in an expanded area and sort of more well thought out, more sort of planned and sort of future oriented. So I think we're going to see a lot of jobs. So it's not just about Singaporeans going over, right? It's also Malaysians coming over to Singapore. So I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting activity mix. A lot of maybe, cross-cultural kinds of stuff that are going on. So a lot of SME opportunity and SME activity interacting with the new towns there.
All right. Well, finally, this was PM Wong's second rally as Prime Minister, first after GE. How would you characterize his leadership style and vision at this stage? I'll give this one to Yen Han first.
I think he has decided to focus a lot on partnering Singaporeans. I think that is one part of his speech where he talks about how his government can't do this alone, and he doesn't want it to be a situation where the people just rely on the government. He wants to bring in the community, the partners, the individuals, anyone who has an idea. I think the government has said that they're willing to hear it, whether it's through citizen panels, youth panels, or different kind of forums that they are planning to hold. And I think that's what he said his team wants to do, which is to listen to the Singaporeans and bring in their ideas.
Reuben?
Yeah, what struck me was, as Yen Han mentioned, about citizens as partners. But I think he went one step further to basically say, don't just tell us, join us. Right. And it was interesting that he spoke for 2 minutes longer this year compared to last year. Maybe he had more to pack in. But it just felt that he's almost taking a cheerleading style to leadership, right? He wants to cheer people on, to say that, look, don't just look towards the government. He cited a lot of examples of citizens helping each other.
Yeah.
So I think it's really to create as much trust, not just between the people and the government, but also trust fabrics across different parts of society so that together we can think about Singapore and move it forward towards our individual dreams.
All right. Before we let you go, what does last night's speech reveal about the challenges Singapore must prioritize in the next decade, do you think?
Lots of challenges. I think that very focused on health, preventive health especially, aging and things like that.
Yeah.
I think it's to underscore an urgent need to flatten the healthcare cost curve. All right, cost curves are just increasing with our aging population. He mentioned that Singapore is going to be almost at the cusp of being super aged, right? So it's preventive health. It is things like decreasing the risk of mortality by managing social isolation and things like that. That is important. And he also spoke about the gender differences in getting people to participate. Men don't participate as much as women and so on. So I felt that really was sort of the focus of getting us ahead in spite of an aging population.
Yeah. All right. Well, so much was covered at the 2025 National Day rally. And now the real test lies in how Singapore turns these ideas into action across businesses, communities, and everyday lives. Big thanks to Dr. Reuben Ng from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy and Go Yen Han from the Straits Times for all of your insights this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lots more to come on the show. Stay with us. Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.